course, we all know about reincarnation.
The body may live and die, but it comes to be again.
What is it that reincarnates?
The nature of the soul is that it's eternal.
Vedic literature presents the soul as a very real entity.
I am the soul and I have a body.
Various cultures around the world provide interesting insights into this journey of the soul.
When reincarnation arises in Greek philosophy, it comes in that crystallized form.
Reincarnation has enjoyed widespread acceptance throughout most of known human history.
The belief systems in the West have totally inhibited us from seeing what's right in front of us.
The word reincarnation refers to the concept that human beings and perhaps non-human beings consist of two separable components: a physical body and a psychical entity called the soul. At the death of a physical body, the soul persists and eventually becomes associated with a new body. Though the transmigration of the soul has been widely accepted throughout history and across cultures, as seen in Eastern, Roman, and Greek philosophies, to most people today, reincarnation is mostly conceptual. To them, it is one of the many plausible explanations for what happens to us after we die. The specific details of the reincarnation process remain a mystery to those who regard it as a tenet of Eastern religion or a nebulous New Age phenomenon. So, where can we find precise information about reincarnation and its mechanism? Various cultures, belief systems and philosophies around the world, from Greek Platonism to Buddhism, Sikhism, and American and Australian indigenous cultures, provide interesting insights into this journey of the soul. Some may have reservations about consulting ancient texts in our present scientific age. Considering past insights is, however, a time-honored tradition, even within the world of science.
The wisdom traditions have a lot to say about interiority, about the subjective world. Science is really good about the objective world. In order to know the comprehensive world, we need to combine both of those in some meaningful way.
The roots of reincarnation can be traced back to ancient India and its philosophical texts. The Vedic Literature Library provides a detailed framework to understand the mechanism of reincarnation.
I look at the texts themselves, without any preconceived idea. Of course, we all know about reincarnation, but I look at the texts and see what they have to say and see how that concept developed.
Central to the idea of reincarnation is the question, what is it that reincarnates? Or what passes from one body to another?
अजो नित्य शाश्वतोयम पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे, as the Upanishad says at the Gita too. Ajo Nitya, this is self-born, Nitya, permanent, Shashwata, eternal, Purana, ancient. Nahanyate hanyamani shariri, even if the body is killed, it is not killed. So therefore, it has its existence.
Why is the soul so amazing? One reason is the incredible variety of bodies it can inhabit, and almost 100 meters tall, and also in a microbic germ, millions of which can occupy only an inch of space. The soul can power not only the gigantic body of a whale, but also the tiny bodies of the plankton that the whale feeds on. Isn't that a humbling thought? The body may have the full biochemical, functional capacity to move, but it can't do so without something or someone to do the moving. The body needs the soul.
We sometimes say in the West, I have a soul. But I think from the Bhagavad Gita's perspective, it'd be more correct to say, I am the soul and I have a body. The soul is what provides cognition to an awareness to the body. And it's the soul that is the part of us that is aware, that feels. Soul as like the sun, it illuminates a particular area. Sometimes it's described like a lamp or a candle. It provides the light of a candle will fill up a room in the same way that the illumination of the soul will fill up the body.
What does that mean? Who are we? We are the source of consciousness in the body, the eternal soul. It is this soul which is the meaning giver to the body, and not the other way around. The fact that the body and the soul are fundamentally different makes it possible for the soul to move from one body to another. This is an essential component in the process of reincarnation.
As a man discards worn-out clothes to put on new and different ones, so the embodied self discards its worn-out bodies to take on the new ones. It's a very powerful simile in which we throw out clothes which are of no more use to us and take on and rejoice in new ones. So the death is not really a time to feel sad. We're only discarding stuff which we don't need anymore.
We too strive for pleasure. The body allows us so few avenues through which we can get pleasure, as it is the cause of much grief as well. If we were just our physical bodies, then why would we have a thirst for pleasure that we are so ill-equipped to satisfy? Our thirst for pleasure originates in the joyfulness inherent to the soul. We might wonder then, if we are actually immortal, full of knowledge and bliss, then why don't we feel so? The answer lies in how deeply the soul is buried. Our past materialistic actions create deep impressions on our psyche that almost entirely obscure our awareness of the soul or our spiritual identity or consciousness. Further, it is the covering of this consciousness that differentiates between humans, animals, and plants.
So we may be a human being, we could be an animal. It is a creature. And therefore, all these creatures at some point will reach liberation. This notion of karma becomes common in many of the religions that began in India at the same time. So Gautama, the Buddha, Mahavira shared a kind of common ethos from which this notion of karma and reincarnation and eventually a liberation, a moksha, that is, complete end to this process of reincarnation, is spelled out in fairly good detail.
Reincarnation is central to the teachings of the Buddha and to Buddhist thought in general, as seen in the Jataka tales, which are stories of the Buddha's past incarnations, many of which are said to have been told by the Buddha himself. These tales illustrate the compassion of the Buddha by describing how he incarnated as a god, as an animal, and even as a tree in order to help souls in various stages of bondage to attain liberation or nirvana or moksha. For example, one tale tells how he was born as an elephant and helped a woman in distress by making immense sacrifices, even filing off his tusks for her sake. That woman, recollecting his selfless sacrifice, in her next life became his disciple and went on to become a great saint. Reincarnation is also central in the belief system of Sikhism. Guru Granth Sahib, the holy text of Sikhism, states that all living beings, including animals, have souls, and the souls go through different life forms until they are purified to become one with God. A little further west, the ancient religions of the Mediterranean world developed quite different kinds of reincarnation beliefs. For instance, Greek Platonism asserted the pre-existence of the soul in the celestial world and its fall in the human body due to sin. In order to be liberated from its bondage and return to the state of pure being, the soul needed to be purified through reincarnation. Perhaps the most colourful explanation or story about reincarnation comes in the dialogue of Phaedrus, where the soul is analogized as a chariot drawn by two horses. One is the dark horse, full of spirit and energy, but hard to control, and the other, a white horse, who is easier and also full of spirit, but more obedient.
In the Phaedrus reincarnation story, he imagines the soul, upon bodily death, ascending up into heaven. As the soul rises, it can gain a glimpse of a beautiful field of what Plato calls forms. So perfect beauty, perfect justice, and so on. And there's a procession of gods watching this field. And as you rise, you can join that procession. And if reason is in supreme control, it seems, the chariot can rise and stay there. But if reason's not in good control, if the horses are doing what they want, they're going to lose interest in that field of beautiful forms. It's not something that they can really appreciate. And so they pull the chariot back down, and the soul goes back into another incarnation. So people who are very angry as human beings, if they let their anger get control of them, if that white horse pulls the chariot off, they'll be reincarnated as lions. Or if they're too subservient to their bodily appetites and they're too tied to the earth, they'll come back as snakes. They'll slither along the earth and so on.
So, according to the Greek philosophy, our present life is actually a preparation for the afterlife. Plato says it quite clearly in his book, Phaedrus. Philosophy is the preparation of death. What is death? What happens to us when we die? Vedic wisdom answers this profound question by outlining broad principles that shape the soul's journey after the body dies.
Is that there's three distinct things that they recognize. There's the gross physical world, and that would include the physical body. That's the visible physical body. This is something we call material. Part of Prakriti, material nature. Its definition being that it's always in a state of transformation and flux, it's moving. They also recognize that part of the material nature is something we might call a subtle reality, a subtle dimension, or a subtle body, composed of what we call the mind. And this mind has different components to it. And the third thing that they recognize, and are not discussed in Western science, is that they recognize consciousness as entirely separate from that. So you've got a gross physical body, the visible body. You've got the more subjective component of the mind. And then you've got a third thing called consciousness, or the Atman, or the Purusha. The soul is completely separable from both the mind and the body. And it can exist independently of them.
The subtle body is the medium through which the soul interacts with the gross body and the world outside. It is a repository of our past experiences and is responsible for making decisions on the basis of loss and gain. It also makes us believe that all we are is this body and not the soul. When a person is unconscious, the normal pathway for seeing is obstructed, as the physical eyes are closed and the visual areas of the brain are not functioning. Nonetheless, the soul is always conscious. In fact, it is consciousness itself. And the subtle sense of sight is still capable of functioning. The soul, along with the subtle body, temporarily leaves the gross body, which is likely to happen under special circumstances when the body is severely distressed, damaged, or dysfunctional. In these kinds of situations, the soul can observe the gross body from outside itself, using the subtle sense of sight. This can account for the factual perceptions documented during near-death experiences, and can also explain a phenomenon even more puzzling: the ability of some blind patients to see during near-death experiences. There are numerous documented cases in which children in various parts of the world remember precise details about deceased people who they claim to have been in a previous life. At the moment of death, the soul and the subtle body leave the gross body and move to another gross body. The memories are stored not just in the physical brain, but also in the mind part of the subtle body. Theoretically, memories from one's past lives are available for recall in the present and future lives. But generally speaking, these memories are so deep within the mind that for most of us, they don't seem to exist at all. Nonetheless, In some rare individuals, memories of a past life remain. Often this is true for individuals who died suddenly, violently, or both. Because death is so abrupt and traumatizing in such a case, it may not allow the soul to fully process the death, and so unprocessed memories of the event remain in the next body as a sort of hangover. This can also offer an explanation for birthmarks and birth defects in some cases, involving past life memories. Many scientifically documented reports have shown that mental impressions can manifest themselves as physical marks on the body. The impressions of fatal wounds inflicted on the gross body are created in the mind. When that mind accompanies the soul into the next body, it can cause those impressions to be expressed as birthmarks or birth defects. Death actually occurs when the soul permanently leaves the gross material body.
And it's the ego that allows this non-physical, this completely spiritual self to inhabit a particular body. The ego is what makes, it ties the non-physical soul to the mental and the physical bodies. In a text like the Bhagavata Purana, it's described as a knot. It's what causes the connection between the non-physical self and the mental and the physical.
When the soul exits from the gross body at the moment of death, it is encapsulated within the subtle body. The gateway through which a soul departs indicates its next destination.
The ideal place to leave was sort of the upper part of the body through one of the chakras, or these centers of energy within the body that were sort of circular and provided sort of gateways between the external and the internal, the physical bodies.
Souls that depart through the holes in the head continue on towards the higher, more evolved realms of the universe, whereas the souls that depart through the other holes are headed toward lower, less evolved realms.
The Puranas in general paint very, very elaborate and interesting pictures about what happens at death. And because there's so many different types of karmas, people are performing so many different types of actions, the post-mortem life or after-death life is very different for different people. And in between humans and gods, there's all kinds of different creatures. There's embodied lives of ghosts, and there's under realms as well. There's realms of the Nagas, of the reptilians, and all of these different places are candidates for the soul. You can go to any type of these different realms. And so you get these very elaborate and detailed descriptions about all kinds of worlds and spaces that exist still within the material sphere, but it's a very colorful.
When the soul sets off on its journey to the next body, it is given a transitional body. Equipped with this body, the soul is taken by nature's arrangement to its next destination. In exceptional cases, when the soul does not get a next physical body, then it stays in a disembodied state. Souls that are victims of extreme behaviors such as suicide and abnormal attachment live in this disembodied existence and are called ghosts for a variable interval of time. Typically, the body a particular soul gets is determined by the broad principles that underlie the mechanism of reincarnation. Reincarnation is, therefore, something like taking off an old suit and putting on a new one. Just as the type of suit we wear is usually determined by our taste and our budget, the soul's new suit is determined by its desires, its attachments, and the karma it has acquired. Similar to the belief system of the Greeks, as detailed by Plato, but this changes when the soul gets a human body. Why? Because the human body allows the soul to express its free will. The capacity of the human body to redirect its consciousness from a material to a spiritual level offers the soul an opportunity to escape the cycle of reincarnation and attain an eternal life. When we attain this destination, the mystery of reincarnation is unraveled. Death transcended, eternity reclaimed. Although they can be attributed to the close exchanges between Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe, the fact is that many cultures of the world have believed in reincarnation and continue to do so at present. The belief has been reported in several groups from diverse locations, including some Islamic sects of Western Asia, of Alevis and Druzes from Lebanon, numerous natives in North America, many tribes of East and West Africa, the Trobriand Islanders of the South Pacific, and the northern tribes of Central Australia. Haida Gwaii is an archipelago on the north coast of British Columbia, Canada. The First Nations people of British Columbia experience reincarnation as a revitalization of their culture.
I have been doing a lot of research with reincarnation among indigenous peoples in North America, and I did not expect that when I went to do research towards my PhD at Harvard with the Beaver Indians, who are in northeastern British Columbia. I was surprised that when a new baby would be born, they'd say, "Oh, this is such and such an elder, come back."
Amongst the Haidas, reincarnation isn't mysterious. That's the way it is. So, the old people would say, you don't have to fear death, but you certainly don't need to rush to it either. It'll come, in its time. And so when it does, there's certain understandings of how it works. Like for instance, it depends on how you die to where you go. That mysterious and seems like a lot of people do understand it in that way. A lot of other cultures beside our own. So amongst our people, there's a lot of stories where there's good evidence, like of somebody putting things away before they die, and then in the next incarnation going and retrieving it is one pretty extreme example, because it's not as if you come back as the same person. You're starting again. You build your own personage and become a different new person. So you got to get on and live the next life that you're given, and so on.
I didn't know that Native people, that reincarnation is a deep part of their worldview and spiritual belief. And so in my PhD thesis, I looked to see whether the tenets that I saw of the Beaver Indian worldview were present in the other North American culture areas in North America, and further search and that book Amerindian Rebirth, Reincarnation Belief Among North American Indians and Inuit documents the thoroughness of belief in reincarnation in North America. It's before it was known that the indigenous people in Australia, many peoples in Africa, and Ian studied a number of them, such as the Igbo, have belief in reincarnation.
It is therefore quite plausible that the belief in reincarnation arose independently in different places, in different times. It is obviously not just one or two of the world's cultures that have accepted reincarnation as a part of their worldview. Various religions that occupy a significant place in any culture also accept reincarnation.
So there is precedent for believing in reincarnation. A lot of indigenous cultures have had a belief in reincarnation. And if you do a survey of all the beliefs around the world, almost in every place, in every isolated place across the world, some concept of reincarnation has emerged. It's just as natural as watching the cycles in nature. And people have known this forever. So I think that the belief systems in the West have totally inhibited us from seeing what's right in front of us.
But